Hello, everyone. Welcome to the opening session of Unfunded List Philanthropy Training and Proposal Review. My name is Brienne, and I'm an Unfunded Fellow here with one of Unfunded List's board members, Peter Williamson, to talk about family foundations. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Brie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good. So you are part of Kettering Family Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about that foundation and what you do with them?
Sure. The Kettering Family Foundation is now sixth generation family foundation. I'm a fifth generation member, so going on for a few years now. I am a board of trustees member that does a bunch of reviewing of proposals for the family. It's a volunteer position, and have really enjoyed being a part of a giving philanthropic entity since I was a kind of teenager. And so it's share a little bit about today, kind of how that process goes. And the Family Foundation is about 40 or 50 members, and I would say 20 of which are participating in some level at the philanthropic kind of giving, and we're scattered about the country. So, thinking about where we're giving is a complicated question, and how we've structured that is fairly intentional. But that's a little bit about Kettering.
That's a big family. Ours is on the board at least only 6 people. So much bigger than ours.
Share a little bit more about the Skees family.
Yeah, so I work with Skees Family Foundation. We work with small community-based organizations in developing countries or low-income countries that work in job creation or vocational training and things like that. We used to have a much broader mission, but we've narrowed it through the years to focus purely on kind of like the economic development side of things. And I started out as a board member in 2013, I believe, and moved into as a voluntary position, same as yourself, and then moved into a paid staff position in 2016. I was like a bit more proactive and intentional with kind of like how the foundation is run and things like that. It's been quite an exciting journey. I definitely have learned a lot and made some like really great changes, I think, in how the foundation is kind of moves forward and things like that. That was pretty, it's been a pretty exciting journey, I think. So are you planning to stay involved with your foundation for indefinitely, or what's your plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way that we've structured a lot of our foundation is that it is very voluntary. And so you can kind of come in and come out when you need to. I think that flexibility allows for, family planning and thinking about when you're having kids or going to school or, being able to engage when you're most able to. I've been lucky to kind of set it as a priority. So I really find that it's an amazing educational experience to kind of build relationships with nonprofits in at least my areas of interest, which I sit on 3 committees in the Family Foundation kind of giving process, and environmental, kind of human services, and public society benefit, which is like a catch-all kind of committee. I feel like it's a lot of the nonprofits that fit into the sort of miscellaneous categories. So I'm really interested in thinking about how the intersection of some of these issues come together. And so I read about 50 to 100 proposals kind of twice a year. And, thinking about how I can help the family better the process for future generations has been my big passion point. And so because I put it as a priority, I intend to stay involved for quite some time. But one of my big goals is to try to get more of our generation involved. And I think a lot of family foundations, especially the ones that are a little bit bigger, are starting to feel that pressure of how do you make sure that you can continue the momentum of the foundation and make sure that there are enough people to steward it forward. Obviously, you have more people, but with that comes some different challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because we definitely had kind of a similar transition with our board as well, where our family engagement was actually quite low. So it started out, so Skees Family Foundation is significantly younger than Kettering Family Foundation, of course. And so we were founded in 2004, very new. And we had a couple of, generations involved from the very beginning, which was quite exciting. But now that, the older generation is starting to transition out, a lot of the younger generation wasn't that interested in transitioning into new board positions. And it's interesting that you have the same kind of experience. But we're actually kind of, because of that and because of multiple other reasons, we're kind of like transitioning away from actually being a family foundation and bringing on more people from outside of the family, mostly people who are closer to the work that we're trying to do. So bringing in people from nonprofits, bringing in people who have kind of a lot more on the ground experience and can kind of see what we're trying to fund and like see red flags that maybe they would be able to pick out more easily than we would, since we're so far removed from that kind of like experience. So that's been quite an interesting, development with our foundation, and just kind of like the transition of power, because like kind of we feel that like just because like a family has been wealthy does not necessarily mean that there is like a lot of expertise there. And so we're trying to bring in more experts essentially.
So glad you say that. I think it's I feel like, you might be a younger foundation, but it's a mature thing to say in this space, because I do feel like there are a lot of philanthropists and groups out there that they kind of front themselves as experts in a space, or they're interested enough in a space that you apply to them expecting to get kind of that level of response. And it's not always the case, right? There are some people that they really want to give back to their community, but they're also learning through this process. And I think that's the way that we've really structured Kettering Family Foundation with, 40 or 50 people. To get everyone aligned on one topic is going to be really challenging. And so there's naturally going to be a selection process of like, there are areas of interest, but those areas are so diverse that, we've made it a pretty intentional effort to kind of create the committees as a way for members of the family to learn, and bringing in outside people that are experts in the space. I hope is kind of that next generation of philanthropy, right? Is really thinking about how do you empower the folks that know what's going on and trusting them, to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's super exciting, and look forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, well, you won't be hearing from me.
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess I'm sure in your foundation, just as in ours, there can be a lot of really frustrating experiences within philanthropy. What would you say are maybe your top 2 most frustrating things?
The top 2 most frustrating things. I think for a larger foundation and as a younger member that really kind of wants to move the needle or push in some kind of new progressive thing, trust-based philanthropy, some of these newer terms that are coming out, it just takes a long time, right? You've got a lot of procedures and kind of terminology that's in your bylaws and stuff like that. And so just being able to switch those things, we're kind of like this big tanker ship that's moving, right? And the kind of patience and maturity that I've learned over the last couple of years of like, what are those little wins and steps in the right direction? How can we use pilot projects as a way to open up ideas has really helped us at least explore the conversations of making some changes that are bigger in how we give and how we engage people. So I think that's both kind of frustration, but hopefully an optimistic frustration where I think we are kind of moving in the right direction. I would say the other piece is just building relationships. As a relatively private family foundation, we don't necessarily put ourselves out to the world, right? We're not a big family foundation that a lot of people know of. It's the name, if you're in certain areas of the country, you might recognize it. But we've done a pretty good job in keeping it fairly insulated. But with that, means that the proposals you're getting are very invitee based. It's like if you know the foundation, you kind of apply knowing there's someone in the family or there's some kind of connection, and with that comes a relationship expectation that you're going to follow up and all of that. And I think over the years, we've gotten better. And it's some of those small incremental changes, but that is one of the most meaningful things I think of giving is building those deeper relationships and watching something grow over time. And I think when there's less of a public mindset to that, we can sometimes get trapped in the wheel of like, there are a lot of people that come to us and everything's a great idea. But with that means we're not necessarily building deeper relationships and investing into certain communities as much as we should.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that and would agree, because, with our foundation being so small, we have, very limited funds that we can give, right? And so, we have a very small number of nonprofit partners that we work with. And so it's great to build those relationships and as we give multi-year grants, we have a lot longer time to kind of build those relationships. But same as you, we get kind of stuck with the partners that we know and that we really get, we trust them and things like that. So it can be harder to kind of broaden your scope within your partner pool, I would say. I would say that's a frustration for me as well. But then kind of as you were saying, on the other hand, those relationships are such an exciting part of the experience that, it's really just kind of a trade-off. And then, so as everybody, watching now is likely or should be a reviewer for unfunded list proposals or evaluators, sorry. And so when you're reviewing proposals for unfunded list or even for your foundation, what are some of the things that you like to keep in mind when you're doing that?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I've seen and now kind of running a nonprofit in my professional life, just making sure that, again, you're prioritizing the relationship, right? You can apply totally cold to a foundation and get a grant. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I will say that it perpetuates some of the issues that a foundation might feel, which is they're coming to us and for that kind of transactional, they're going to give us funds, we're going to be able to do the work, that's great, but not necessarily going that level deeper. And so as a reviewer, I like to think about kind of funder fit and how, if you're applying to a foundation, you're applying to any kind of funder, where does that fit in their portfolio, right? Almost think of it like an investor that's trying to kind of stay in a lane, but they want to diversify a little bit, right? Do you fit? Do you fit inside kind of what their goals are, and how do you find that out, right? And so the more that a nonprofit can share about the history of what they know or what kind of conversations they've had with the foundation or what info sessions they've gone to, the things that kind of give a reviewer that extra bit of information so that when they're reviewing, it's not kind of this typical, here are a couple grammar edits that you can make, here are a couple things here, more of those deeper, this feels like a good fit or it doesn't feel like a good fit. You're probably going to get rejected right out of the gate because of X, Y, or Z reason. And I can't tell you anything more frustrating for a nonprofit development director than to spend 25 hours on a proposal and get it rejected within 10 seconds because they didn't read the guideline, right? And so just making sure that as people are evolving their proposals, they're making sure that fit fits the criteria, because that would be the fastest way out of the pool.
Yeah.
And then there are always ways that you can refine things, right? And I'm trying to help usually with language and making sure that as someone who doesn't know what they're doing, I can give them that fresh set of eyes, right? I think that's something that's incredibly valuable and something that a funder mostly will react to, but won't give that direct feedback. And one of the reasons I think Unfunded List is so valuable is you get that kind of unbiased perspective. So those are a couple things.
Yeah, that's what I like that about it too, right? Because it's kind of like, being allowed to submit a draft for a research paper before you have to turn it in for a grade. I just finished grad school, so it's on my mind.
Sure.
But yeah, like I would agree with that. And, something else that I like to keep in mind, specifically, I think with doing the unfunded list evaluations is that, the nonprofits or, organizations who are submitting these proposals to unfunded list are really looking for ways to improve, right? So when I'm giving feedback specifically, I like to be very intentional about the comments that I'm making and give, examples, or if I say, there are several typos, maybe point out where those typos are, be as helpful as possible, because the organization who submitted this proposal has likely already spent hours and hours putting it together, right? So if you can be less vague, more specific, I always think that that's always a really helpful thing to do. And that's kind of, what I've heard from nonprofits as well when they're getting evaluations. Just more specificity is always helpful.
Yeah.
And then always also to keep in mind that no matter what you think of a proposal, a person is behind this proposal, and it's always nice to, put the good with the bad, not just the bad or, something like that. But
I like that. One of the pandemic activities that my wife and I have gotten into is watching the Great British Bake Off. I don't know if you're a Great British Bake Off watcher, but
I gotta be.
I was going to say, so I don't know if that's anyway. But the judges that are on the show are very, very good at giving that kind of critical feedback, right? Or feedback that you can learn from, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just always all good praise. It's not always all bad, negative, right? It's kind of mixing the two. And I think with any good review process, you're going to get the affirmations for the things that you're doing right, but also some honest, candid things that could really benefit. And as you build trust, it's hard to do that kind of on a one-off setting, but the more details, like you said, you can offer to kind of say, I'm doing this out of the best interest of this exercise, and not just I'm here just because I think it's right. I think you can give a lot more specific feedback. It takes a little bit more time to do, but I think we'll save the nonprofit, the folks that are writing those proposals a lot of time going forward, because they can use more specific feedback as almost like a blanket statement kind of going forward, right? They can apply it in different places and save themselves time and hopefully be more successful across a lot of future proposals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. Anything else you wanted to add before we go?
No, just thanks for putting this together, and hopefully people that are reviewing proposals or kind of in the funding ecosystem think about what review can do for a nonprofit, and especially those who are spending the hundreds, thousands of hours putting these things together. How can you make the ecosystem a better place, right? We're seeing a lot of burnout and a lot of tired folks in the last couple of years, especially. And so if you've got a little bit of energy to support, it can go along.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And then if anybody who's watching, I'm sure Dave will share our email addresses, so you can always feel free to reach out to us or Dave as well. And thank you everyone for watching, and have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.